it wasn't like meeting somebody who, oh, this completes me as much as, oh, this just makes everything kind of better and more fun.
Welcome to Dating Apps, the podcast where we swap wild dating stories, share laughs, and serve up real talk experiences and advice. So let's get into it. Hi, friends. Welcome back to Dating Apps. I'm your host, Alex Daly. And today we're talking about something straight out of a rom-com, meeting your person in the back of an Uber pool. In a world where most of us are swiping our way to love, my guests today, Caila and Alex, managed to have the cutest meet cute in real life. We're going to get into it, and we're going to find out what happened after that fateful Uber ride as well. So today I'm joined by the stars of this modern love story, Caila and Alex. Welcome to the pod.
Good to be here, yeah.
Thanks, Alex. I like the name of your pod, by the way. I also love the card art. I feel like you have a really great aesthetic going. So,
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That means a lot.
Kayla's offering her podcast industry insights at the top of this.
I have no editorial insights. I literally look at spreadsheets all day. I'm just saying I like your card art. It looks great.
Well, I appreciate it. And, maybe we can TB after this. I would love to get your input. But we're gonna talk about your love story. But before we get into that, let's warm up with a little game of red flag and green flag. I'll give you some scenarios and you can tell me if it's a deal breaker or if you're into it.
Okay.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Red flag or green flag, they still live with their ex for practical reasons.
Red flag for me.
Red flag. Interesting. I really think it depends. Like if it was an easy breakup, and they're doing it for practical reasons, financial reasons.
For a limited time.
For a limited time,
There has to
obviously.
be an end date in sight. I think we have a friend who's doing this right now, but there is an end date in sight. I think if the game plan is we're going to live together indefinitely for practical reasons, then that is a huge red flag.
Yeah, I think if there's like an exit plan, that's one thing.
Right,
but
like
I
the
am
end of the
always
lease.
Yeah, I'm always on the side of like a huge green flag for me is anybody who has like a pretty good rapport with their exes.
I would say
They don't have to be like best friends or anything, but like, you can grab coffee sometimes or like you speak of them well. If you can get through like, living with this person for an extra 3 to 6 months or whatever until the lease expires, like I think that shows like a lot of maturity.
Yeah, I think so too. And rent is expensive, especially you guys are in New York. So
Yeah. Now, if it's like a blowout breakup like that, that's maybe different. But it's often like circumstances, right? Like people are kind of caught in circumstances. Rent is expensive.
totally. Yeah, I lived with my ex for like 3 months after we decided to separate because, the lease and whatnot. And it felt like the longest.
Well, it
3
sounds like
months
you
of my
decided
life.
not to separate.
Right. No. But we are still friendly. We're on good terms. So
Well, that's good. Yeah.
Seems practical. That makes sense to me.
yeah. All right. So next one, they don't text you back for 3 days, but then they come back at you with a meme.
I would do this, so I'm gonna say it's a green flag.
In dating?
I'm just bad at texting generally, and I'm better at memeing.
That's true. You are a very good shit poster. That's probably one of the reasons why we fell in love was we both have a deep and intense love and appreciation for shit posting. I'm going to go with red flag though. In terms of dating, like if you're trying to get to know somebody and like, after 3 days or whatever, they don't kind of like own up to the fact that, are you okay? They don't own up to the fact that they've sort of like kept you on red or like haven't responded. I think that's a little inconsiderate.
Yeah, it's a little scary to not hear from someone for a while, but if it's a good meme, then
Yeah, I mean, I think it also depends, how long have you been seeing this person? Like, if it's early, I think you're allowed like first date, second date, I think you're allowed a little bit more leeway in terms of like time it takes to text somebody back. But like if you're in a relationship, that's wild.
I don't feel like I don't text you for days, but I send you 17,000
But
memes.
we live together. That's different.
Okay, potato, potato, whatever.
hmm
Mhm.
You've also gotten better about it, like over the course of our relationship.
I'm not a good texter, but now that you have my location, you kind of know what
That's
I'm
true.
doing. You know, oh, um, you're not responding because you're at work.
Yeah, or I'll be like, trying to figure out like when to start dinner and be like, "Oh, are you still at work?"
Fair, fair. I feel like I'm learning that I'm the bad communicator in this relationship, but that's okay. We'll work on it.
I think we're both pretty good at it, actually.
So just an area for growth.
Exactly.
Sure.
There's always areas for growth.
Okay, next scenario, they refuse to share food on a date.
Wild red flag.
Yeah. Wild red flag to me as well, because I feel like if you really are enjoying your food or it's terrible, the first thing I'm going to say is you need to try this.
I sort of understand like there are scenarios where the food is like fully shared and scenarios where the food is like, you get your meal and I get my meal. But like, you gotta let somebody try it at least. Like, if you're just gonna hoard the entire thing, that's crazy.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm also totally guilty of being like, no, I don't want anything. I'm fine. And then somebody else gets food and I'm like, can I have a bite?
Specifically with dessert. I feel
Yeah.
like you're like that a lot.
With dessert,
Yeah, you're like, oh, I don't need dessert. So
let's split it. Yeah.
then you're like, oh, they gave us 2 spoons?
Yeah, I would say like and this is me calling myself out here, calling myself in. Another red flag is the like, yeah, like stealing food situation. I think I'm a bit of a food stealer sometimes.
Remember that time you drank that Diet Coke that I had been saving for myself all week?
Yes, I got an extremely
Ooh.
angry call from Caila a few months ago. No, you were mad. You were legitimately mad.
But I was also laughing, but I was angry.
You were laughing once I brought you a Diet Coke later in the day. But I did like scramble to like a CVS to find like an identical can of Diet Coke because I felt,
Apt.
which I did gift wrap it. I felt terrible.
Yeah, if you're saving something, that's no good. Be prepared to be met
hmm
with wrath.
I was under the impression that it had been languishing in the fridge. I
Mm.
did not realize it had been like a plan.
I had
It
a
was a
plan.
special Diet Coke.
I don't drink caffeine a lot, but when I do, I plan for it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
All right, well, we will save the Diet Cokes for Caila.
Thank you.
Exactly.
All right, here we go. They don't have social media, red flag or green flag.
Hmm.
What's like a middle,
Yellow?
like a yellow flag?
It could be a yellow flag, or it could be. I think it could be a really good thing, like a green flag, or it could be a sign of major social deviance.
hmm
So I don't know. I think that it's one of those things, though, where I do feel as if your social media presence gave me pause
Interesting.
because you were very active on social media. And I found that that wasn't necessarily the most attractive thing, but then I found out that you worked in social media, so it made a little bit more sense.
hmm
But yeah, I'm usually skeptical of how someone shows up online.
Yeah, I guess
Interesting.
that would be my question is like what would you prefer, no social media or someone with like a very active social media?
I honestly think no social media is kind of cool. Like a lot of the people that I know that don't have social media are like really cool.
Really cool. Like your brother has no social
My brother has
media.
no social media. Our friend Steph has no social media. She's really awesome.
Really cool. Also, you have social media to the point that you got us doxxed. So I feel like you were a little too aggressive on social media.
That is true.
So
Yeah.
yeah, once our address was released to like a far right
Oh
group,
geez.
we were like, I was
Yeah.
like, maybe we slow down on tweeting.
Yeah. Well, I think we've all slowed down on tweeting a little
Yeah.
bit.
That's real. Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize until like I exited my marriage what a blessing it was that my ex was not on social media. 'Cause it's really
Mhm.
like when your relationship ends, it's like that was a gift that he's like not on there.
I was just talking about like the idea of when people have to like hard launch their breakups
Oh,
and how that's so much like weirder and harder than like hard launching a relationship. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember who it was, but I feel like one or two times I've seen people like do like the Instagram collab post, but like to be like, we're getting a divorce. Everything's fine.
or the polar opposite of that are the couples who don't trust each other so much that they share all their social media handles.
Yeah, that's wild to me.
Yeah, but I also feel like it's this whole other world that our parents' generations never had to navigate. I'm sure in like the 19th century, people weren't like, oh, but they posted this on, you know, the Daily Crier is saying this in the town square. Like these are things that are very unique to our
Hmm.
generation.
Yeah.
And it makes me really sad for like Gen Alpha and Gen Z because so much of it feels like reality when it's not. Like if I had seen you on social media or had seen you on a dating app, I probably wouldn't have gone on a date with you.
Hmm.
But because I met you in person, it was different, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa. All
Mhm.
right. Well, I feel like that is a great segue to get into how y'all met. So
Good job.
Got
let's talk about it. How did this Uber pool magic happen? Set the scene for us.
it. Where were you coming from?
Okay. So my two best friends are a married couple. They were out of town and I was cat sitting for them. You know, fed the cat, hung out with the cat for a little bit. So, I got an Uber pool home. This was like December of 2016, so still very much
December 27th. So
December 27th.
it
Yeah.
was between Christmas and New Year's and it was really cold. I remember.
Hmm.
I remember at the time I wouldn't usually get an Uber, but if I
You
were
weren't, you also weren't going particularly far.
I wasn't going far, but I was running late, obviously. So I was like, okay, I'll get an Uber pool. But I also had received some nominal bonus at my job where I decided that during the end of the year, I was just going to take Uber pools everywhere and splurge and pretend I was fancy.
Hmm.
Treat
Um,
yourself.
Ironically, though, I do think it was a good precursor because so much about a relationship are your kind of opinions on what's financially worth it. And the fact that we were both unwilling to pay for like our own Ubers, but we
Hmm.
were okay to get an Uber pool, really was foreshadowing for our mutual frugality.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. I was going on a date with
Oh,
Not with me.
plot
not with
twist.
Alex. Yeah, I was off to a date with somebody that I really should not have been going on a date with because this person worked in my office. It was such a bad date that ended up being like not a great
We'll get
thing.
to that part.
Yeah. So I got an Uber pool and I lived, unbeknownst to me at the time, just a few blocks away from where your best friends, this married couple who
Hmm.
foreshadowing would then be both our witness and our officiant at our wedding. But I got an Uber pool, and typically what I will do is I will meet an Uber where I lived at the time in Lefferts Garden, which is like deep South Brooklyn. I would go to the corner of the street and not have the Uber drive all the way down the street because it was a dead end and there's not that many dead end streets in Brooklyn to begin with. So this was unique and it was like terribly paved and everything. There were so many cars that were double parked on the street that I didn't want my Uber rating to plummet because it was such a pain if you had to turn around on the street. So I was like, oh, my plan is like I'll walk to the corner, but for whatever reason I missed the alert that the car was nearby. And so our Uber driver had driven all the way down the street and was in this terrible position where he was trying to make one of those sort of Austin Powers
Like
50
40,
point.
yeah, 45-point turn.
So I didn't
Yeah.
miss the ride, even though I didn't see that the driver was there because it was taking him so long to turn around. So when I got in the car, obviously you had been sitting there.
Not terribly long.
Well,
I
I
feel like
didn't
you
know.
feel horrible about this particular
Well, that's why
bit of
I
it. We were there for like 2 minutes.
Well, that's why I apologized. I said, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that you were here. Sorry to you, random person who's in
Hmm.
this car with me. And you were like, oh, it's okay. I was like, great. Okay.
Okay, so were you got in, were you both in the back seat?
We were both in the back seat.
Yeah, our
Um,
relationship started in the backseat of a car.
yeah. I feel like this was also still like the period of time where like when you would do an Uber pool, you sort of like made you were like, okay, I am saving money, but I am also committing to like having a small conversation with the person in the back.
I don't think that's true. I think
I
most
had a lot of great Uber pool
But
conversations.
that's our personality is
That's
that we
true,
would
yeah.
schmooze with somebody who would be sitting next to us regardless of who it was. Like I would say 50-50 I would talk to somebody in an Uber pool, and a lot of people in my life later, like within the 6 months that we started dating, thought it was insane that I had talked to somebody in my Uber pool. And I'm like, you don't talk to people if you're sitting side by side with them.
I would hope for silence if I ever took an Uber pool. It's like, please, please, everyone just like be in your own world.
I'm always like, I want the
You want the
I
gossip.
want the gossip, I want the tea. One time it was like right after like the first or the second presidential debate, and I was in an Uber pool with a like Hasidic Jewish guy who was like
Love
around
it.
my age. I was like 26 at the time, and they were probably, 25 to 28.
But in Hasidic Jewish time, that's like you're 45 because
Old, yeah.
yeah, your life has already, you probably have like 6 children or something.
I
Anyway,
have no idea. At some point in the conversation, he goes, well, I'm not really that religious. And I'm like, compared to whomst exactly? Like, compared to me, you're extremely Jewish. But yeah, so great conversations sometimes. Like, loved being like in the backseat with somebody who was absolutely wasted.
that wasn't me,
That
to be
wasn't,
clear. That
I
was,
mean, we were both a little bit stoned, but
but it was 2016. It was the winter of our discontent.
yeah, we just sort of had, I would say, like a pretty casual conversation.
Well, we were talking about, I remember how we were both in New York around the holidays, and I had mentioned that, oh yeah, I really wanted to have Chinese food on Christmas, but since moving to New York, I haven't been able to find any good Chinese food. I just like, it's,
Mm,
it's not happening for me.
You
And
didn't,
that's a good hook.
I don't think you said it like the way I remember it was you said, there's no good Chinese food in New York. And I
because
got offended.
because it was around Christmas time, and typically for Christmas, what I would do is obviously Chinese food in a movie.
Yeah,
Um,
classic Jewish tradition.
But anyways, I was complaining, as
Hmm.
I do, about bad Chinese food, and you were
I just
like,
started like listing off places.
and I was like, oh, okay, I've never heard of those places. Those sound good. On its surface, though, I was being like, terrible. And then you said, then I think we were talking about that show, Oh Hello,
We might have been talking about Oh Hello at some
Oh, on
point. Yeah.
Broadway?
on
Hmm.
Broadway, which I
Yes.
had gone to see and loved. And I was like dying crying in the audience because I thought it was so funny. And then I told all my colleagues to go see it. And they were like, I didn't get it. It wasn't that great. And I'm like, ugh,
And like,
Oh, I thought it was
I
hilarious.
thought
so
it
I
was
thought
funny
it was,
too.
not only did I think it was hilarious, but like as a Jew that grew up on the Upper West Side, I had never seen a show that I felt was like nor made specifically for me. Like
Yeah.
so many of like the joke about the Judaica shop that's always closed. Like I've been to that Judaica
And it's
shop.
always closed.
It's always
Yeah.
closed.
So we were kind of talking about that. And then you mentioned that you did photography. I mentioned that I worked at a magazine. Um, and I was going to see a movie,
Rogue One,
Rogue One, which
which
I
I feel like I remember that more than you do.
Well, yeah, because I didn't really get to watch the movie because the person that I went on a date with got food poisoning and threw up on me. Um,
Oh,
so yeah, I was like,
spo-
"Ugh."
spoiler
Spoiler
for where this
alert.
story is going.
But we added each other on Facebook, and part of the reason that we added each other was like sometimes I hire photographers to do content projects. I work on like the ad business side, which I never did, but I was just like,
I think
maybe.
we were flirting.
Oh.
Um, and I feel like the moment where I was like, ooh, I think this might actually go somewhere, or like this might be like a connection, was Caila had been sort of like rifling through her bag for a business card. Um,
Which is so
so networky, yeah.
no, but it's also so antiquated. I don't know anyone who has a business card. Everyone has a friggin' QR code now. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, this was pre like the
Pre QR code.
pre QR code. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's rifling through her bag, and she eventually just like takes out her phone and goes, "You know what? I feel like this was more of a social thing," which for me was like, "Oh, okay. Like I think this is going to be like relationshipy
Yeah.
or datey rather than just like, you know, me getting a business contact."
But I looked you up on Facebook, and we had one mutual friend who happened to be somebody who I knew very well and was extremely close to in high school. Ron, and I was like, great. Okay, so you're probably not a murderer. This
Good.
is good because, yeah, I was happy about
Because
that.
you don't want to meet a murderer.
You don't want that. So yeah, went on my way, went on the date. Had a
How
terrible
long was this Uber pool ride? Like, how
Like,
long were you
20
chatting?
minutes.
I think 15 to
We
20
have the
minutes.
receipt.
We have the receipt somewhere.
Yeah.
It's like framed in our little display case.
2 minutes is decent.
I lived in Hell's Kitchen at the time, so I was going pretty far. So the next day, I Facebook messaged you and was like, "Hey, like, how'd the date go?" And
Ooh.
Caleb was like, "Terrible." He threw up all over me and like had food poisoning and is like still in my house and like suffering, and I don't know how to get rid of
No.
him.
That
And
is
I felt
worse than
bad.
expected.
Yeah, and I think that part of me, I feel bad for anyone who's having a stomach issue, nonetheless, on a date. And so I was like, take your time, but also get out of my house.
Hmm.
But also, I'll be in the other room while you deal with your situation.
Why would they not go home if they were ill?
We've all had this experience. They were so sick that they couldn't be away from a bathroom.
Hmm.
That was
Oh
the
my God.
situation. And they were in my house, and my poor roommate, who was so done with all of the random people that I had brought home over the past like few months, was like, "Oh my God, who is this person in our
That's
house?"
terrible.
Why do they keep vomiting?
Which is also foreshadowing because I feel like later, months later, when you met my roommate, they like cornered you and were like, "What are your intentions with my roommate?"
Yeah, it was
Um,
very fatherly.
yeah, so that was sweet. But so then I guess this was December. We both, I think we both ended up, we were dating different
We were
people.
sort of, yeah,
Like
like dating.
we went out for a drink. Like we didn't, and I feel like the drink we went out to, we got in a conversation. Like the first conversation we were in was about the worst thing that we'd ever done in a relationship and just sort of
I feel
airing.
like you had just had like a bad date or so like something had happened where you were just like,
Remember.
fuck it. I'm just gonna like ask like wild questions.
So, how did you get to the first date?
We were messaging, we were just chatting, very friendly, and
Yeah.
Alex was like, "Oh, we should go grab a drink or whatever."
It was like a let's go grab a drink situation.
And so we did
Um,
that, and then spring kind of sprung, like a few months went by. You were going to a friend's art opening. You were like, "Hey, you want to come to this art opening with me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And I remember it was like the last Girl Scout group selling cookies. It was the beginning of April, and I was obviously running late, and
Kayla showed up like 15 minutes late with a box of Samoas.
a lot of Samoas, yeah.
And like, listen, I love a Samoa. It's objectively the best Girl Scout cookie. Fight me if you believe otherwise.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree.
thank you. Well,
See,
or you don't want to fight.
yeah. I know. I feel like, Alex, you have good taste. So,
Thank you.
no, other Alex.
Okay, fine. There's two of
We
us.
both have good
Yeah, you
taste.
both
We
have.
both like Samoas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just kind of like hung out outside of this art gallery, like eating.
But it was a lovely evening. Then
Mhm.
you were invited to the after dinner because it was, close friends only. And I was like, okay, great. See you later. And then
Mhm.
another month went by. And then I invited you to my birthday party. And at the time, I was really obsessed with Crocs, which I say at the time I'm still obsessed with Crocs. And I invited
Mhm.
you to my birthday party, and you were playing a music festival.
I was just there.
Or you were
I was just
going to a
there.
music festival and you said, "Oh, I would love to come, but I'm in Pennsylvania and at this random music festival. We can hang out later." But you also you were making fun of me. You said, "But I probably wouldn't come anyways because you were wearing such ugly Crocs." And which
To
is
be fair, you were wearing the Mario Batali issue Crocs, which are now canceled.
they were really cool, and they had his signature on them, and they were made for kitchen work, and they anyways That's neither here nor there. You were making fun of my Crocs, and I was like, "Ugh, fine."
Hmm.
And then you got back from this festival. I want to say it was Sunday of Memorial Day weekend. And the night of this birthday party that I had, which I think was the day before, somebody had broken a wine glass and I had stepped on a shard of glass. And then I went to the urgent care and I said, "Can you please help me get this
Get this
glass?"
glass out of my foot.
And they were like, "Listen, the person who does that, they're not going to be back until tomorrow. So can you come back
We
tomorrow?"
only have one glass foot guy.
And I said, "Okay." They're like, "Just keep it elevated." But Alex was like, "So you want to watch a movie or something like Netflix and chill?" And I
I
said,
think you were the one who said Netflix.
"Sure." So, okay.
So
I
up
said,
until this point, you guys were like not dating, you're not romantic.
No,
It was
we
just
were like
like,
friends. We would text pretty frequently.
"Yeah, we just
Um,
chatted all the time."
I think like we probably like both had like feelings or like a crush.
I forgot. I forgot actually. So I was dating somebody that May, and you were kind of on the end of a relationship with someone that May.
Yeah.
And my sister was getting married that May, and my sister had also blown up at me over something. So I was having a really hard time writing a maid of honor speech because she was so mad at me. And we got a drink, and you were helping me write
Yeah.
the maid of honor speech. And then we were also talking while we were getting a drink, like, "Hi, I'm seeing this person, but I think it's sort of kind of ending, like
Mhm.
it feels like a natural bookend." And then I went on a date the day after that with this person that I was seeing, and he snapped at a waitress like this.
ugh.
And I like broke up with him on the spot. So yeah, then I texted you.
That is one of your, I would say, like extensive red flags is bad restaurant etiquette. Because the reason you broke up
The
the
barf guy.
with the barf guy wasn't because of the barfing. You would think it's
You
because of the
think.
barfing,
Yeah.
but it was because he stole food from a buffet.
Yeah. Which you wonder why he gets food poisoning. It's like you're stealing food from a buffet. It's
Hmm.
karma slash,
Yeah.
you know. Anyways, I just do not appreciate anyone who mistreats food service people. And boy, did that guy. So yeah. Then we had, we watched a movie. We got like pizza. What do we watch?
We watched Mulholland Drive,
Holland
which is an insane movie to watch on a date. It's David Lynch. It's very like surreal and
Hmm.
weird. Um,
But yeah, and then I feel like we just started hanging out from that point on, and then we
mhm,
didn't really officialize a relationship until we actually went to Philadelphia.
mhm.
We went on a trip to Philadelphia, and then when we got back, we were like, we're dating.
Well, you had like a nervous breakdown. Like
I
we
wouldn't
were
describe it as a nervous break.
we were like cuddling in bed, and Kayla's like, and sort of like having a little panic attack, and I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, I think I'm in love with you, and I'm like, I'm in love with you too, and it was like perfectly fine.
We were like, okay, great, awesome.
Wonderful, yeah.
But yeah, I think I was like, oh, if Alex gets hit by a truck tomorrow and I never tell them this, I'll
Oh.
regret it. And that's why I was having what you would describe incorrectly as a nervous breakdown. I was just,
Oh yeah, no, you weren't having a panic attack. You were just wondering how you would feel if I got hit by a truck.
yeah. So,
She was just
total
lovesick.
normal.
Non-anxiety behavior.
Yeah. We've talked a lot. That's the end of the story. It's the end of how we met.
That's mainly how we met.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's the story. And it took a minute like after you guys like met in that Uber pool for you to like
We
actually be dating.
Yeah, we were hanging out, like texting kind of platonically for like 6 months.
It was a slow burn. And in that time, I was dating a bunch of people and I had to kind of I made a rule for myself that year in
It
2017,
would have been 2017, yeah.
2017, that if I even a little bit liked somebody, I would at least date them for a month because I was having a really hard time not being an asshole. And I mean, there were other extenuating circumstances. I think that the backdrop of having like a misogynist take office also made me want to like mistreat men, candidly. So I was like, okay, I should be more thoughtful.
Hmm.
And so I dated you at a time when I was like, oh, I will date people for a month if I like them. And so fortunately, I dated you for a month and then continued to
Yeah.
date
Now it's
you.
been like, what, 7, 8 years?
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's wild.
Where does the time go?
Truly.
I feel like you guys must have really liked each other because if Caila, you were in South Brooklyn and Alex, you were in Hell's Kitchen, that's like long distance, basically.
It's essentially a long distance. Yeah.
Also, you'd have to be insane to want to date somebody who lives near Times Square, which you did.
What's funny is like at the time I had been living there for about 4 years. I lived in Hell's Kitchen for 8 years. I was so desensitized to it. Like I couldn't understand why everyone who came to visit me was like weird about it. And then like as soon as we moved to Brooklyn, like every time I'm in that neighborhood, I'm like, how did I live here for 8 years? Like I do love the neighborhood. There's a lot of great food. Um, there's my beloved AMC 25. It's very central. You can get to a lot of
Yeah.
places very
Yeah,
easily.
like Madame Tussauds and the M&M store.
Hey, don't diss the M&M store.
But I think what was interesting though is so I moved in with you, probably a year after we started dating, and then the pandemic happened, and the most
Mm.
dystopian place that you could possibly ride out a pandemic would be Times Square. And it was the best time to live there because no one was there.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. Manhattan was in like obviously like extremely dystopic, but in terms of like travel times, it
Amazing.
was really nice.
Yeah.
Like, I had to like drive my brother uptown. He lived on 86th Street at the time with my parents, and it took us like literally 5 minutes to get what
All
would
Green
usually be
Line.
like a 20-minute trip.
The
But yeah,
only good thing about the pandemic was there was
truly the only thing.
no traffic in Manhattan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything else was pretty bad.
Everything we would say on the bad side. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good that you guys had each other and were able to hunker down in Hell's Kitchen of all places.
Hmm.
Sure was.
So, do you feel like that time brought you closer together?
The pandemic.
Yeah.
I would say so. Like, yeah, I feel like that was very much the proving ground for a lot of relationships. Like, I know
Hmm.
a lot of people that broke up with their partners during that time, and I know like a number of people that ended up getting married because of the time that they spent during the pandemic. We got married in July of 2020. We had like a small ceremony in Riverside Park.
We could
Uh,
have never gotten that venue in normal times, honestly.
Yeah, we basically just like walked over there. We streamed our wedding on Twitch. Um,
We met in an Uber pool. We got engaged on Zoom. We got our marriage license on Microsoft Teams.
we did get our marriage
With
license on Microsoft
of
Teams.
then we got married on Twitch, which again was kind of ideal because we both have big families that I think politically would have clashed.
A little bit.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think neurotically would have created a lot of chaos
Hmm.
together. So also, my dad walked me down the aisle on FaceTime because he
Aw.
was in New York or he was in California, I was in New York. And I think that there's just something very interesting about how we were able to harness the power of technology or just all of those aspects of how we came together was very
Yeah.
millennial in a lot of ways.
Very millennial, very terminally online.
It seems to be a thread for y'all.
A little bit. Yeah.
But I think like the kind of some of the stuff prior to the pandemic that was really telling is when you met my family and didn't run for the hills.
I love your family.
Really?
Aw.
Yeah.
You're so, I mean,
I mean,
you love the family
I love the family that you love.
that you interact with, but I feel like the first time you met my immediate family, one of my sisters interrogated you and was like, "So, you're Jewish. How many people do you know that died in the Holocaust?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
This is somebody that like Caila doesn't talk to anymore.
Yeah, but you also, I think part of the thing that made me very happy, like a year into our marriage. We were interacting with my evil sister, as we'll call her,
Mhm.
and she was blowing up, she was yelling at everybody, and everyone's used to her yelling at everybody. And my sister's husband, who is not confrontational, was sort of just standing there like, ugh, what do I do? But because you're a New York person and you don't have any problem like rolling down your window and yelling at somebody in the crosswalk,
I don't know what you're talking about. I never have done that in my entire
it
life.
was the first time that somebody had ever like yelled back at my sister, and you were like, you don't talk to my wife like that. It was like, hell yeah,
Yeah.
fight for me, king. It was, yeah, it was good. So I loved that. I also feel like you had a good relationship with your family, and your siblings.
Yeah.
And also,
You get along with my mom too, which is,
your mom is amazing and
yeah.
very, I think,
I have a very intense mother. I've had relationships that my mom has been an issue in. And I've like, had my issues with my mother. And so having a partner that really got along with her and has often acted like as like a buffer at times for us has like, I think my relationship with my mother has really improved over the times that we've been together for various reasons. I think one, it's just like eh, things either heal or break like as you get older. And you sort of like are able to a like adult rapport with your parents, but also like you've always been so good with my family. Like you love my sister, you love my parents, you love my brother.
your family is amazing. I do think that it was daunting though, because I wouldn't call myself like the most well-read or academic person in the
Mhm.
world. And your family is very, I feel like very educated, very read in, very like on the pulse of culture. Probably to my benefit, I'm really bad with celebrity names or faces. So I didn't have any of that issue of feeling like, oh my God, starstruck,
Mhm.
because I didn't know I was talking to a Pulitzer Prize winner. Or I was like, oh yeah, cool, great. Wait, who was that? And so I
Mhm.
think that initially was also really helpful. But I mean, it just culturally, I think your family's neuroses really mapped on to my neuroses.
And isn't that beautiful?
That's
So beautiful.
where it landed. Anyways,
You guys are so sweet. And I would love to know like how you have been, since this period of like a lot of intense growth, like meeting in the back of an Uber pool, communicating via Facebook Messenger, having a wedding via Twitch. How has your relationship evolved since then?
well, I think that we've been faced with certain life challenges, I would
Mhm.
say. I had my last living parent died, and so Alex had to kind of experience what it looks like to clean out three storage units full of shit in 100-degree weather, with everyone screaming at each other.
I did okay,
You
I would
did
say.
okay. I think that my family was like, why aren't they doing more manual labor? Why aren't they comfortable legally disposing of all these drugs? And I'm like, there's like a lot of things that you're asking of us to do here.
Yeah.
But I also think that in 2019, when you sat me down and you really had a candid conversation with me about your gender identity, your sexuality, and how you
Mhm.
were feeling, that was really scary for me. So I
Yeah.
don't know if you want to talk about that, but
Well, yeah, I came out as queer in depending on like who to whom, like
you
late mid to late 2019.
you did have a fedora phase in high school, so that was
I
it
don't
was a
know if that I don't know what you're talking
A
about.
clue.
it was a
I don't
clue.
think that's a clue.
Yeah.
I think if anything like that um I feel like if you wear a fedora in high school, you're more at risk of becoming like an incel than a queer person.
Okay.
But anyway, I came out to Kayla in fall of 2019.
Which I should have known because we had just driven 9 hours to see Carly Rae Jepsen in concert, so that should have been a
A
giveaway.
little bit of a giveaway.
Yeah, but I mean, I love Carly Rae.
Sounds
You
like a
do.
good
Great show.
time.
It
Yeah.
was an incredible show.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we sat down. I told Kayla, I think at first Kayla was worried that this meant that I was going to leave her and that
Mhm.
I needed something outside of this relationship. And I really didn't. I just needed to like be open about like the person that I was hiding from. And and it was very nebulous for me. Like I didn't exactly know what I meant when I was telling Kayla, like, I don't think that I am like a straight man. And it took a lot of time to figure out, I was interested in like makeup and feeling feminine and being feminine at the time. I was grappling with like my attractions outside of like heterosexual attraction. Kayla, I think,
I was
was
afraid.
nervous about it. She freaked out a little bit,
Well,
but like
my
not,
first thought,
I would say like not in a way that was like ever um like never like phobic, it was she was worried about the relationship and
I think it was actually, I had a very selfish thought. I thought, oh no, if I'm dating a gay guy, then everyone's going to think I'm gay. And then I was like, wait, I don't care if people think I'm
mm,
gay. But it was a very 15-year-old thought, like living in the suburbs in 2004 thought.
mhm,
I was like, oh my God. And then I kind of realized, wait, we live in New York. We are, we have a vibrant life full of like art and culture.
mhm,
You can walk outside the house wearing anything. Also, I wear a lot of makeup, so it's probably my influence on you that you
probably a little
wanted to
bit.
wear makeup. Um, so I was like, maybe I I had some part in this. And it also didn't fundamentally change like our sex life,
Yeah.
or it didn't change anything about our relationship as much as I just knew who you were better.
Mhm.
And I think that
I
was
mean, I
good.
think like it was a big adjustment for both of us. It also like I came out more publicly like right before the pandemic. And so a lot of my kind of figuring out my gender identity was like at home during the pandemic. And like this is actually something that like a lot of like trans people and non-binary people went through. Like a lot of people went through sort of like gender I don't want to call it a gender crisis, but like a, sort of like gender reckoning um over the course of the pandemic because you were just sort of like alone with yourself.
Hmm.
I was
Um
I was there too.
no, you know what I mean. But
Yeah, yeah.
like you weren't like there
Yeah.
wasn't as much to like fill your days
There
and
were
so you were
distractions that,
yeah.
yeah. I don't know. I think that it was just a definitely one of those experiences where then after the pandemic or as the world started to open up, people would come up to me at the club. And these were people I hadn't really interacted with
Mhm.
about this topic. And they would say things like, oh my God, Kayla, you're just so brave. So yeah, it was kind of interesting to see how people behaved around me as
Yeah.
well. But I think I had a very selfish perspective on it. It didn't change how I felt about you as much as it had me sort of reassess my identity in relation,
Yeah.
because I think who you're married to, who you're with becomes
Like
this,
it's a reflection of you.
it's a
Yeah.
reflection of you and it says a lot. But I also think you were not the first person that I dated that ended up being trans.
Mhm.
So that was also, I'm like, oh, maybe I have a type. Um, and that's okay. Like I was,
Also me, which is like also should have been like a an indicator. Like a number of my exes have now like come out and are either like trans or non-binary or both. It definitely was an adjustment in the relationship, and I think it took time for you to figure out how you felt about it and how I felt about it and like what we both needed.
it's been funny though now that, so we have two nephews that
Mm,
we are very obsessed with, and Alex and I'm auntie, and then you were like, what do I want to be called?
mhm.
Because I don't want to be called uncle.
Yeah.
And then
Onkel, I've heard onkel, which is like a little bit, it's a little awkward. It's a
we like
little
made
clumsy.
up a word.
I use tia, which is in Spanish tia tia. Tia tio is aunt and uncle, but there's sort of a developing convention in Spanish where you use an e at the end of words as a gender neutral term. So
Hmm.
um
Yeah. So you're
So
TA.
I'm TA, and they're still sort of like, I don't think they really get it or know. Like, I think a couple of times Johnny has come up to me and been like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm doing makeup." And they're like, "Why are you doing that?" And I'm like, "Because I like makeup."
And they're just
Um,
like, okay.
yeah, I've had one of my family friends' kids. He came up to me at an event and he was like, "Are you a boy or a girl?" And I was like, "Well, what do you think I am?" And he was like, "I don't know." And I was like, "Yeah, all right, bye."
And that's it.
It's like you're trying to figure out like what is my sort of like responsibility in all of this to I like it's not my job to kind of like sit them down and be like, well, gender is a
Other
spectrum,
people's
yada yada yada.
kids.
Like
Yeah.
they'll get there. They'll figure it out.
Kayla, that is funny that your first reaction was like, people will think I'm gay. But I do like what you said about like, oh, that was like a 15-year-old part of me. If you've ever done like internal family systems and you like
Yeah.
break down the different parts of you, like, how old is that part? How old does that part think I am?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I think so much of like why I took so long to come out was the sort of like that era of like being a teenager in the mid to late 2000s where like homophobia and transphobia was so prevalent in culture.
Oh, remember
Um
everything was like, that's so gay.
so gay.
And
Yeah.
I would say that I would
What's
like
the Hillary Duff line where it's like that's like saying that's so wearing a skirt as a top.
I
Do you
don't
know this ad? It's like a
I
PSA.
yeah.
a Disney Channel
I
PSA.
think so, where Hillary Duff sort of like confronts two girls at like a department store, and she's like, "When you say that's so gay, do you know what you're saying?"
A,
It's kind of iconic.
a voice of our
Truly a
generation.
voice of our
Yeah.
generation.
But yeah, I do think that it's a testament to the time period in which we were adolescents.
Hmm.
History isn't, what's the word for it? Like linear.
Hmm.
So right now we're at this time where everything, like all of our rights feel as if they're being clawed back and they're
Hmm.
rolling back all of these basic human rights that you'd think we'd come so far and we
We
wouldn't roll
wouldn't
back.
lose, yeah.
And so I think the Obama era in which we sort of got this glimpse into like a really progressive space will I think it sort of will look back and think, whoa, was that the future or was that just like a weird blip in
Hopefully,
time?
it's the future. I
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Anyways, I didn't mean to bring up politics.
It's hard not to sometimes, but
yeah.
yeah, Kayla, I feel like you mentioned this earlier on, but do you feel like y'all would have met if you were like swiping on dating apps?
No. And when I first started dating Alex, I remember it was summer 2017, and my friends were very critical. They were like, "You're dating a 26-year-old DJ? What are you doing, girl? Like, grow up." Because I think I was 29. We were a few years apart. Like you were about to be 27. There were 2 years apart.
Yeah.
And
That's like nothing.
I think
No, we like to refer to it as an age gap relationship.
yeah, we're May December. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to refer to it as robbing the cradle. But I also don't think that even my filters on apps, and historically, I'm not sure I ended up ever really dating a ton of people I met on apps. I think I was one of those random people who I would just end up meeting people, and that typically worked out better than somebody who I just met on like a Tinder or whatever, but I wouldn't have had you on my filter. My filter was all older. I was like, I need like a mature, wise
An
person.
older
But then
guy.
there was a time I had met this person on Twitter. I was dating somebody who was like 40 and I was 26. And I think in retrospect, that was one of the people that I dated that was the least mature because they were sort of frozen in time a little bit. The
Yeah.
fact that they even had
And
anything,
dating people 15 years younger than them.
well, anything in common with a 26-year-old is bananas.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that when it came to talking about family planning, though, that's where I felt the age difference.
Hmm.
It was like, and I'm getting older here. And you're like, well, I'm not quite ready for that right now. So I think that has been one of those things. But I also think that I never felt this pressure to do things on a certain timeline. Like there was no one breathing down my neck to get married in a certain time, which was good. And there's no one really breathing down my neck to have kids in a certain time.
Maybe my mom.
Maybe your mom. But yeah, I think that was really helpful.
Yeah, I think it's good to do things in like a non-traditional way. I feel so much more free not doing things in a traditional manner. And I am dating someone now who's 9 years younger than me and also a
Hell yeah.
DJ. So, um,
But you're
yeah,
having
love to
fun.
see
I
it.
feel
Yeah.
like
Hmm.
I also find I don't know, I don't go out as much as I used to go out because I am sleepy.
Yeah.
And when your sets start really late, I'm like, I won't make it. But I do think that it's really nice to have a reason or always an option to go dancing, no matter how old you are. As soon as you
It's
stop
so
listening
fun.
to new music and you stop dancing, feels like you're really,
Hitting the wall.
yeah. So I appreciate that. I always have also been very attracted to somebody who is an artist or who is an informant when it comes to music. And so I feel as if you knowing so much about music has been a real gift. I also think that you're a photographer, and I like that you kind of have all these different ways in which you get to follow your passions. And in some ways, I feel like I'm sort of the like corporate, like
You did
I'm
like
like the
early, I
corporate
think the
dad.
first time
You're the
we
artsy mom.
met, or like one of the first times we hung out, you did refer to yourself as quote a business bitch.
I feel like I'm the business lady who will like go to work and like work, a 9 to 5 or whatever, and you're somebody who you don't adhere to, like your schedule is different.
Yeah.
Your work
I think we
is
have a
different,
lot of like contrasting
but
things about us,
complimentary.
but complementary.
Like you can cook. I can eat.
Exactly.
Yeah. Other Alex, do you have any thoughts when you think back to how much planning and all of the time that went into a wedding? Because sometimes I think
Oh,
about that with us, where, we had what I would say was a wedding that was planned in like 2 weeks. And I have a lot
that's
of friends
ideal.
who are like going through breakups or divorces, but then they're also reckoning with, whatever like $100,000 wedding that they had and all of
Hmm.
the pictures and everything. And I'm just curious from your perspective, like how you think about that day and that experience.
I mean, that day was wonderful. Like, I don't regret it. Like, it was nice because we'll never have that like group of people together again.
Yeah.
So, in that way, it was really nice. It was just like a fun celebration. But as far as like the whole wedding industry and how you can get so like wrapped up in it and just the performative aspect of it, I think is just kind of yucky. It just feels like having those big weddings is almost like a status symbol, and it's like, look at me, I'm getting married, I'm doing this thing, like, isn't it great? And it's just like, at least for me, and I feel like maybe for a lot of other people too, you're not necessarily thinking about like entering into like a actual partnership with this person. You're like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
just like reaching this next stage of life and like let's have a party about it. So I don't regret it, but like I wouldn't do it again.
You don't think you would do it again, if
Not
you,
the not like the big wedding part of it, no.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I always think, should we have an actual wedding celebration
I feel like we talked about it pretty, um, like,
abstractly?
no, pretty like seriously, to do something. And then every year we're like, well, we'll do something,
It's
but
a
like,
lot of work. It's like a full-time job to plan a wedding.
it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I think like the realization eventually comes that like the the wedding is lovely, but what's important is the marriage, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
The relationship itself is like the thing that you should be building and working on. Though I will say, like, I feel like if you are working on a wedding with somebody and like you're just constantly clashing, that's like a red flag.
Or if you're doing everything, I
Yeah.
feel like that's
Yeah.
a red flag too. But I don't know. I feel like we did just about the same amount for our wedding. Like you set up the Twitch stream
Hmm.
and
My mom built a ketubah.
no, a chuppah.
Sorry, a chuppah. Sorry.
I don't think we have a
Wow, am I?
ketubah. Yeah.
We don't have a ketubah. We need to get one of
We
those.
need to work on that.
In a Jewish wedding, you step on the glass at the end. Yeah. I think I suggested, or maybe you suggested, that we both do it. And so I stomped on it, and then Kayla stomped on it, and it kind of just looked like we were like beating someone up.
No, but
Yeah.
I like that. You're not conforming to gender norms. It's like, why don't you both
Yeah. And
step
this
on the
was,
glass?
yeah, I would say like midway through, like me sort of like figuring out gender identity stuff. And I do remember like kind of talking to Missy, my friend and our officiant, about like, let's not say husband and wife. Let's say I now pronounce you married, and kind of degendering the ceremony, which
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that I get to sort of like look back on that and like that be part of it.
Yeah, I think that it's funny too to think about how I had glass in my foot when we went on our first date. And then glass, like stepping on the glass is so symbolic. It's funny, one of the things I always really like about you, Alex, is you rarely have something mean to say about anybody. Like when
Aw.
somebody's not in the room, you will find only kind things,
Yeah.
unless it's my sister.
I feel like even with your sister, I'm just like, oh, well, I feel bad for them.
Yeah.
Like, which is, this is funny because I love being a hater too. Like, I'm not above being a hater, but I think I try to like empathize and like see the good in people. And I think you do that too, to like a huge extent. Like, I think we're both like very deeply empathetic people, and like we
Mhm.
get, frustrated at other people sometimes, but like we try to at the very least understand them.
I think I've gotten better at it. Like I'm less inclined to have a nemesis now that we're together. I used to always kind of need a nemesis and
Especially at work.
a
Kayla
work
loves a work
nemesis.
enemy.
Yeah, whatever.
Oh, well, that's sweet that you're able to bring out the empathetic and kind parts of each other.
We try.
Yeah.
Isn't that the goal?
It is, truly.
Y'all seem so sweet. I would love to know if you have any advice for our listeners in terms of like dating and relationships.
Hmm.
Huh. I don't know.
I have one. If you can't talk out a conflict with somebody, I think that's like the biggest issue for any relationship. Like there's always going to be some form of conflict in a relationship. It's not persistent, but like it's going to pop up from time to time. You're two separate people. You're never going to agree on everything. And being able to skillfully and lovingly and empathetically navigate when there is conflict or a divide in the relationship, I think is like paramount. You need to be able to just kind of talk it out and do so in a way that's kind of sensitive and caring. And it's definitely something that like we've worked on in the course of our relationship and gotten.
Yeah.
We've always been good at it, but we've gotten, I would say, even better.
We were seeing this couples counselor for Beat, and it actually, I think, was worse for our marriage because I would save up everything and you would save up everything for the time that we would meet with this person.
Mm.
And then he would just let us yell at each other for like an hour because I
Oh my
had
God.
been like, well, you didn't put the lid on this or you didn't do this. And it would all just be contained to
Yeah.
when we met to have our like couples counseling. And he would just be standing there like, uh,
Popcorn.
yeah, like, okay. So, not, I don't think the best couples counselor, but it's funny. I think one of the
I
things
think also like, doing that helped us build up those skills to an extent.
we're like, wait, why do I save this up for Tuesdays when I could just talk to you about it when it
Mhm.
happens?
Hmm.
Uh, but the thing that you were saying, I think my biggest challenge when dating and the thing that made me feel like this would make me want to give up being single to be in a relationship, which I think I was fairly happy single. Like I liked dating. I liked doing my own thing, having my independence, like making decisions that were only really impacted me. I enjoyed that. But I think that what ended up happening is when I met you, it wasn't like meeting somebody who, oh, this completes me as much as, oh, this just makes everything kind of better and more fun. And we still are our own independent people. But I was really nervous about being bored. I hated this idea
Ooh.
of marrying somebody or being in a long-term relationship with somebody and being bored to tears by whatever came out of their mouth or, you know, their thoughts and feelings or whatever
Mm,
thinking. And I think you have never been boring, even when I'm asking you about what did you do at work today? And you were like, it
mm.
took me 2 hours to render a file. And I'm like, oh my God. Like I feel as
I
if
also like,
I love talking to you about mundane things and you make them fun and not boring. So
mhm,
thanks for not being boring.
Things are just not boring because you're a good match and you light each other up.
I
Yeah,
think so.
yeah, it works.
I
I
love
mean,
hearing about your work drama. Kayla loves like I'll like watch a movie solo and then like tell Kayla the entire plot.
yeah, which I enjoy because I'm like I'm probably not going to watch that, but I really want to know what happens.
Sometimes it's your bedtime story.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's a good thing, but I also think that there's a world where, and I was just grabbing drinks with a friend who has been single for a while and doesn't foresee herself meeting anyone like anytime soon. And I think there's something that we need to normalize about that's cool too. You know,
Hmm.
the goal shouldn't be marriage. The
Yeah.
goal shouldn't, I mean, obviously the cost of living is so high. I get why people pair off and especially in New York, but I also think that living independently can be just as enriching. So I've had those moments too where I'm like, well, what would my life be like if we weren't married?
Hmm.
And I think that we would still hang out all the time, so it's just more convenient.
Yeah.
We got married. Just more convenient this way. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes there's a reason to live with someone, but I agree. I think it's just it shouldn't be the end all be all life goal is to get married. It's just like, yeah, if you want to have a partner, it should be someone who does add something and makes your life better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel lucky and a lot of people are like, "Well, what's the secret to meeting someone?" And I think it's just luck, honestly. It doesn't really
Mm.
come down to anything. I mean, obviously volume, like numbers, like putting yourself out there, meeting a lot of people, but you
Being a slut.
being a hoe really helps. No, just being open to meeting new people really helps.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Be open, be a little bit slutty, be a little bit less traditional maybe,
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
and have fun. Like,
Just have
why
fun
not?
with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that advice that everyone's just like, shut up. But it's true. Like if you're having fun, you're gonna attract people that also like to have fun. So
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think we get or people couple off for a lot of the wrong reasons. Like when people were judging me for dating somebody who they assumed their only job was being a DJ. Alex has a day job, but they'd only post really about
Hmm.
their
mhm.
nightlife. And I think it's really interesting how much bearing people put on what somebody does when the essence of who you're marrying really has nothing to do with what their career or their profession
Yeah.
is. And I think can be fundamentally flawed. And you see that on dating apps. Like people will say, "Oh, a CEO of nothing, swipe left," you know? So I think it's really important to try to think about people outside of what they do for work, especially in a city like New York.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think it's a really boring question on a date to be like, so what do you do? It's like, no, like what do you like to do? Like
Hmm.
it's a
Yeah.
better representation.
I think pets are also like an important thing. I thought you were real weird when you told me that you had a pet rabbit.
And then you fell in love instantly
You were like,
because
"Can you come over? I need help. I have to cut Rorschach, my pet rabbit's nails, and it's a two-person job." I said, "Okay, I'm sure you say this to all the girls." And then immediately I realized I will die for this rabbit. I
Mhm.
love this.
we should
Oh.
pet we should cut Barb and Ed's nails soon.
Oh yeah, we need to do their nails.
Yeah.
Okay.
Funny
Well,
parenting.
I don't want to keep you from that. So
pretty big. I'm
Yeah,
sorry that we went over, Alex, but thank you for meeting a little bit later.
of course. And thank y'all for coming on the pod. It's been a delight, and I loved
Yeah.
hearing your meet cute story. So precious. But yeah, thank y'all for joining me.
No problem.
And
Thanks for having us.
yeah. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. And if you want to share your own dating story, email me datingappspodcast@gmail.com. But yeah, until next time, let's keep yapping and chatting, and I'll talk to you later, friends.